guys, so for today's show, we have a very important topic. What is it, Dave?
Well, the topic of today's show is The Last of Us 2 a masterpiece?
So, spoilers will be involved, and I'm talking spoilers from the beginning to the end. If you have not played this game and you care about playing this game, don't listen to this right now. Wait until afterwards, because we're going to be talking about all of the facets of it. We are going to give so much away. Be prepared.
You'll be angry if you haven't played really the first game or the second game, and you were expecting to keep all the secrets. You should not be listening to this. So you have been warned.
Yeah.
So first off, I have to say that we are giant Naughty Dog fans.
We are.
We love pretty much every game they've made, especially after the original Uncharted.
Yes.
We played every Uncharted game, including the spin-off, which is really phenomenal. And, of course, the original Last of Us, which we actually replayed right before we played The Last of Us 2.
Indeed.
The Last of Us 2 is a really interesting game in that, though it is a direct sequel to the first game, it's very different in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah. I mean, the first one is so much scarier in like a more like jump scare kind of way, but while still taking you on that very emotional journey. The second one focuses so much more on the emotional journey. It's really about the characters, and a lot of the horror comes from people rather than the zombie creatures. Not to say that the monsters aren't also scary and horrible to fight, but the people are in so many ways worse.
Yeah, and they have really amped up the monsters. You know, like in the original game, like, you know, they had clickers and bloaters. In this one, you know, they added shamblers. They added some kind of crazy, like, Resident Evil type, like, multi-monster in one of the Abbey levels. I mean, it's totally crazy. But I think, you know, one of the main reasons we really want to talk about this game is it has become really galvanizing for a lot of people. I feel like there's a lot of people who genuinely love this game, a lot of people who generally hate this game. And I think we want to kind of examine both games and see maybe where some of that comes from. So the thing about Naughty Dog that's really great about them is every time they make a new game in one of their series, they keep what works and they make it even better. So on a purely technical level, this game far surpasses the first one in realms of you know, the weapons, the skill trees are so much more advanced now. The fact you can make ammo for some of the weapons is really amazing and would have been a huge boon for the first game, because nothing was freakier in the first game than having like any ammo at all. And also, you know, on top of that, even the stuff like the platforming stuff, you know, the you know, breaking windows with bottles or bricks to get into places, using a rope to like get into certain places. It has just become, they've transformed the game into much more of a cool experience and also a little more like an Uncharted experience. Yeah. Which I think is like really, really cool. And that definitely gives this new game a plus over the original one. But now let's get into the story stuff.
Okay.
Because I think that is where the differences start to really change.
Yeah.
This game picks up after the first game. Of course, if you played the first game, you know that at the end of the first game, Joel has a choice. Let the Fireflies kill Ellie and possibly have a cure for the virus, or to save her and kill all the Fireflies and maybe doom mankind to an endless apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you know, like in all of these things, he gives them a choice too. Let me take the girl and, you know, you'll all be fine.
Yeah.
And, They don't agree.
They don't agree.
And when Dave says you have a choice, you don't actually have a choice as the player. There is only one way that you can do this, and it is to save Ellie and in the process kill everybody in sight.
Yeah.
That includes the people that were just doctors trying to operate on her, but in operating on her, they had every intention of just essentially murdering her.
Yeah, and obviously he made the right choice. He made the hero's choice, and he made the right choice for the story. But what's really interesting is the second game picks up after that. The second game picks up many years after that, but the second game's whole plot is really driven by that decision. And that's everything. And so basically, Ellie is like a little older. She's trying to become her own person, but also she knows what Joel does. We find out a little later. And then this new group shows up.
Yeah.
These characters called the Wolves, led by Abby, who, even if you haven't played this game, you have seen Abby.
Yeah.
Because everyone is freaked out that women can, in fact, have muscular builds.
Yeah.
Which nobody knew before this game came out. It was was crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, and frankly, people have done the math to show it's impossible.
Right. Yeah.
Yet here we are.
They can only have big muscular legs like Chun-Li. That's the only thing that's allowed, but nothing else.
Yes. So the wolves, they're there with the goal of getting Joel. And we don't quite know in the beginning, but essentially they get Joel. Abby murders him in a very unceremonious way.
In front of Ellie.
And from there on, we are on Ellie's search for revenge.
Yeah.
Told you it was spoilery. And then the game starts going in directions I never expected. Okay, first off, this is the most progressive game I've ever played in my life. Like, they're dealing with some challenging topics that big AAA titles never deal with.
Right.
First off, your main character, Ellie, is a lesbian.
Right.
That's first off something you don't really see in a game of this size. Second off, it's really adult. Like the scene early on where Ellie and Dina are smoking weed.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on? Yeah. This is like a video game. I wasn't expecting to see
smoking weed, making out.
It's crazy, right? And that's on top of all like the major violence. Other than like Grand Theft Auto, you don't see a lot of this kind of stuff.
It's true.
I think the reason that this game is so impressive is because there is a branching narrative in it.
Yes.
So we start off and we get Ellie's the hero, Abby's the villain, right? And then we get through 3 days of Ellie just messing up Seattle, going for revenge, killing all of these wolves that she knows kill Joel.
Ellie was, no matter what, going to go off on this sort of mission of revenge, but it sort of took on a life of its own when Tommy went off to get revenge, because he was also there when Joel was murdered. Yeah. And despite the fact that he had changed, despite the fact that he was living a quiet life, the loss of the brother that he had finally, like, reconciled with was clearly too much, and he completely snapped and, like, was, pretty much willing to sacrifice everything to get revenge on the people that murdered Joel.
Yeah. And so basically we get 3 days of all this chaos with Ellie not only trying to kill all these wolves, but also trying to find Tommy. And then all of a sudden there's a shift where Abby shows up. Oh my God, like Darth Vader essentially of the series is showing up. And then it switches. Yep. And now we play the rest of the half of the game as Abby.
Yeah.
And this is where the game, I think, really not only departs from the first game, but really becomes something special in the realm of video game storytelling. Yeah. Where, we're now dealt with a challenge. Everything you think is true is not necessarily exactly the way you think it is. And you essentially play Abby from when the moment happens that she has to get revenge on Joel to sort of her living this life as this soldier, essentially, in this war between the wolves and the scars. It's really amazing.
So at the very beginning of the game, you play a little bit as Abby. Yeah. And so it was bound to come back to you playing as Abby. But once you saw Abby kill Joel, you're like, was that all just a ruse? I'm not going to have to play as Joel's murderer, am I? But once you start playing as Abby, you learn why she wants revenge. She was the daughter of the main doctor. Yes. That was murdered by Joel.
Yeah. When you first start playing, you're like, oh, maybe it's just this mission, then we'll get back to Ellie. And then it's pretty much the exact same amount of time you play as Ellie as you play the game. And you're like, man, Naughty Dog, what are you doing to me? Because at the end, because what starts happening is you start feeling for the character. You start seeing these people that you've been trying to murder who have been viciously fighting Ellie as your friends. You see that they have their own stuff going on. You see their motivations for things. And all of a sudden, this sort of black and white scenario of these are the bad guys fades away.
Yeah, there are definitely times in games and movies and TV where, you start to humanize the villain, so to speak. But in this case, you realize Abby is dealing with the same stuff that Ellie is. Like, the same reason that Ellie is off for revenge is the exact same reason that Abby went after Joel in the first place.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, at what point is Abby still evil and Ellie is completely a hero and blameless in what she's doing? Because Ellie is murdering a lot of people and becoming a worse person through this situation.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing because if you think about it, what if you had played as Joel before he met Ellie?
Oh, boy.
What if you had played as essentially bad guy Joel before, he went through the whole redemption story that he had with her?
Yeah.
we'd be playing as a bad guy doing bad things.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They lay enough groundwork in the first game to know, like, Joel was a really terrible person.
Yeah.
I mean, we know he was a raider. We know he killed innocent people. His brother, when they were having a fight in the first game, his brother said he had nothing but nightmares of those years together when they were raiders. So Joel was legitimately a terrible human being before the very first game.
Yeah. Yeah. He went from being a good guy before everything happened to snapping after his daughter was essentially murdered.
Yeah.
To being a bad guy to going on a journey of redemption.
Yeah. So we saw Joel at his best, basically.
With Abby, it's the same kind of thing where we're introduced to her in a lot of ways is her at her worst point.
Yes.
Her at her, like, time of revenge. But then, when we get to her story, and as we go through her story, she actually takes on Joel's story of redemption from the first one, where she, at one point, ends up protecting this kid.
Yeah.
Protecting this kid, Lev, who helps her, but she also really takes him and his sister on to try and help them and save them.
Which is really the masterstroke of this game. I mean, this game does stuff to you emotionally and psychologically that you were not prepared for.
Yeah, I mean, playing as Abby, you become really emotionally connected to her, and you watch as she ends up taking on and fighting against a lot of the people that she had been fighting with in the Wolves.
Yeah.
In order to protect these kids.
It's really amazing, and you're right. You beat for beat, you feel like you're playing Joel's story through her. And I also have to say, I love that Abby's so physical. I love that she's big and strong and muscular. And what's funny is she is very much, all I could think about while playing as her is she's a prototypical video game hero.
Mm-hmm.
She's physically strong. She's got a military attitude. She's kind of funny. Like,
she has a tragic backstory.
She is the kind of character you would normally play in a game like this. And also, what's also really neat is because of they took it a step further, and she has not only a different weapon set than Ellie, but a different skill tree too.
Yeah.
So you're really feeling like you're playing this whole other game with this whole other character that really just adds to the greater depths of the storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they go so deep into the storytelling and really just get you involved in these characters, and you hit this point where like you think the fights are over, like they've sort of had their big final battle, they've gone their separate ways, you think it's over. Ellie's living a happy life with Dina. You got to assume that Abby's sort of off there with Lev, living a as peaceful a life as they'd ever be able to live, which is not particularly peaceful, but hopeful. And then things change.
Yeah, and we're really dealing ultimately about a story about revenge. That is ultimately what both Ellie and Abby's story is.
Yeah.
They're about revenge and about how revenge destroys you and destroys the people around you.
Yeah.
So many of the people in Abby and Ellie's life were hurt or killed in them seeking this revenge for Joel.
Yeah,
or Abby's father.
But it's also an interesting thing because both of them sort of dealt with these nightmares in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
For Abby, she went through the nightmares of having to be there and finding her father murdered, and knowing that the potential cure, which was never a guarantee anyway, but the potential cure had been taken and a bunch of people that she cared about had been killed then.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie, at this point, when she's living a sort of happy life, keeps on having flashbacks to Joel's murder.
Right. I just feel like what's really amazing about this game is that it takes you places you don't want to go.
Yeah.
In a way that is emotionally very difficult. When we get to the point where we play as Abby going and fighting Ellie, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight Ellie. I don't want to kill her by mistake. I know the game is going to do what it's going to do to continue the story, but I don't want to do this. And then, by the end, and I really hope that you've played at this point because I'm going to spoil that too. At the end, their final fight, the last thing I wanted to do was have this final fight.
Yeah.
I had forgiven Abby, frankly, for her sins, and I just didn't want Ellie to have to fight anymore.
Well, prior to that, one of the hardest things for me was seeing Tommy in the state that he was in. He did end up surviving through this, but he had been so emotionally damaged at this point that he could never go back to the happy life that he had built.
There's this really great Confucius quote that is the main quote about revenge. When one embarks on a journey for revenge, dig 2 graves. And that's what this story's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone's life gets destroyed seeking revenge in this. This game is like, man, choices have consequences. Be careful where your rage and your revenge takes you. And it's, you know, so much more true to life. And God, and it just does stuff. And by the end, like, Ellie becomes this person that is horrible. I mean, when she threatens Lev's life, forcing Abby to fight her, you're like, what happened to you? And that's what makes this game brilliant. I spent this entire game, I think both of us playing it, going, the first one is masterpiece.
Yeah.
This game is good, but it's different. And then by the time I hit the end, I'm like, this game's an absolute masterpiece.
Yeah. No, the way that it built, the way that it concluded was just brilliant. And even like the point where you think you're at the end and you're not. There's more game to play.
Yeah.
You know, it was just fantastic.
It really was. I think now we've sort of established we feel like it's a masterpiece. We feel like it's amazing. Is The Last of Us 2 better than The Last of Us 1? Which I think is kind of the main question. I'm sure every single person already on the internet has put that out there. And I think that I don't think they're comparable. Which is really weird because I know one's a direct sequel to the other, but they're both totally two different things. I would say the first game is a little more like a Western, where like kind of like The Searchers, the John Wayne movie, where you have this, or Unforgiven, where you have this badass kind of on the wrong side cowboy who's doing like a good thing to save a child.
Right.
And the second game is more like a tragedy.
Yeah.
It is more like a Hamlet. Or like a Titus, you know, it is something that is meant to be a parable on revenge and violence and about human nature. And so in the end,
but you get such light moments like putting a hat on a dinosaur.
But that's the thing, and also the flashbacks are amazing. But that's the thing, and that's why I feel like the second game, in so many ways, gives you a much more full human experience, and it's so much more challenging. You know, like I think that like. There's a lot of people out there that they don't want to have two females be the main characters. They don't want to have a female that is stronger than all the other males.
Well, especially when none of these females are sexualized in any way.
in any way.
So there is sex.
There is sex, yes. There was definitely sex.
But it's not really a sexualized sex.
I also wanted to say all the voice actors are really great. And please do not send death threats to Laura Bailey, who does the voice of Abby. Not cool, guys.
Oh my God, stop sending death threats to actors and actresses.
Come on, guys.
Seriously.
Both games are amazing. Both games I highly recommend. And I think it's going to take me a long time even to reckon with ultimately which game I like the most, because I think the first game is easier. In a lot of ways. The first game is a very tried and true hero narrative, redemption story. And the second game is like watching a challenging art film where like it's emotionally exhausting to play, but also really fulfilling to play.
I think it's beneficial to play them back to back.
Yes.
You know, even if you've already played them, play the first one again and then play the second one again if you're willing to play the games again, or you don't have to because it's depressing.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of The Last of Us 2? Let us know in the comments down below.
What should we play next?
Also let us know in the comments down below. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.